Awesome, everyone. We are now officially live. Of course, no one is watching just yet. We'll give them a couple minutes to join, but I appreciate you for joining today. This is actually the final event of our fall virtual conference. So it's been a busy couple of days. I appreciate everybody who's watched so far. And Laura and Christina, I appreciate you guys presenting yesterday. I really enjoyed both. I know the group did as well. So I think we're ready to soak in a little bit more of your wisdom. And Carli and Denise, I'm very excited to have you both. So this is going to be a great time. And when I put these panels together, I just love putting people who don't necessarily know each other together and work in different aspects of the industry. So I think that's really fun. Laura, you've been at this a long time. Christina, you're a guild person. Denise, you've got a brewery. And Carli, your pink boots and the brewing side. So we've got a lot of different, viewpoints to look at today. And I think that's going to be really, really fun. And I'm looking forward to it. This year, diversity, inclusion, and equity, they've all been really hot topics in craft beer. And I really hate even saying hot topics because these are extremely important concepts that should be discussed at all times. But, having more coverage of this is definitely an opportunity to make the conversation even better and to turn it into the women representation in craft beer. The numbers show that women represent about 30% of craft beer drinkers. Looking at the brewery side, there's a strong male presence among brewery employees who hold the title of brewer, and about 7.5% of staff at breweries are apparently females in the brewing role. But then you look at the employees of the breweries that are non-production, non-service side, we see about 37% females. But then you look at the tap room, you see about 54% increase. This is so many numbers to take in, and we're going to kind of talk into why these things are the way they are. But first, I'd really like to dive in. We're going to start with you, Laura. Just tell everybody watching today who you are and what you do in the craft beer industry.
Okay. I'm Laura Lodge. I own a little business called Customized Craft Beer Programs. I actually started my craft beer world in the distribution tier. So on the middle tier, things are a little bit different than when you're looking at brewery staffing and taproom staffing. There were not a lot of women in distribution world in the mid 90s to the end of the 90s. Most of the women that you saw were in sales roles. There were an increasing number of women in ownership and management as time passed, and now you're seeing women owning distribution companies, especially where I live in Colorado. You're seeing more diversity. You're seeing more Latino, Latina probably than more Black inclusion, just for not as many, especially up in the mountains. We just don't have as much of our population that is Black, but we are seeing a lot of LGBTQ. We're seeing a lot more just participation and willingness to accept in a traditionally male, generationally past environment. I was the only woman on participating in the wholesalers, the first craft wholesalers conference that was held in San Diego. Stone put that together, I don't know, early 2000s to try to help teach people how to sell craft beer rather than their usual selling of beer, how to taste your customer on beers, how to do all that stuff. So I was on the beginning of that educational piece and got a lot of grief, but gave a lot of grief. So that was pretty even. We've seen it balance out more, and I've also diversified. I've now created craft beer programs. So I've been on the retail side. I do a lot of events. Big Beers, Belgians, and Barley Wines is my biggest event, but I do a lot of others and assist other people in their events. And I do a lot of educational programs. So you'll see me popping in educational roles a lot as well. The food and beer pairing stuff I did yesterday when I presented, that's something I really love to do. So that was cool to do that instead of talking about distribution all the time. So that's kind of where I'm at and what I've seen. So I'll pass the torch.
Some of those pictures you posted yesterday just made me so hungry, and I had to wait 2 hours to eat after your presentation. So I really enjoyed it. Christina, on to you.
Oh, okay. So I've been in the industry now for 15 years. I moved to Oregon back in 2005 from Florida. So my experience up until that point with craft beer was non-existent. I was your typical Heineken Corona drinker when I moved to Oregon. And the first beer I had out here was Jubilee from Deschutes, and it changed my whole world. Got a job in 2005 working in the production facility at Deschutes Brewery, and it really opened my eyes to what I wanted to do. with my life, that the craft beer industry was something unlike I'd never known. But I did notice immediately the lack of women in the industry. And I'll say that over the last 15 years, it's grown here in Oregon. But I would love to see more women. I would love to see more women of color in our industry, especially in my state. I worked in the production facility at Deschutes, and then I was the business manager at Worthy Brewing when they opened. I did that for 3 years, and then took a job at Crux Fermentation Project, which Larry Sador, the owner, was a former brewmaster at Deschutes. He's been in the industry forever, and just really worked my way up. Fell in love each and every year. I've fallen in love deeper with this industry and the community that we have. I've also really tried over the last decade to just hone my skills. Sensory is one of my favorite aspects of this industry. I love judging beer competitions. If I could do that all the time, I would. I'm a little bummed, actually brokenhearted about not being in Denver this year at the Great American Beer Festival. But, looking forward to next year just because of the pandemic. But I think being a woman in this industry is hard. I think that we have struggles that men do not. I think we have to prove ourselves even more than men do. But I feel the women that I know in this industry are making a change, and I look forward to the next decade.
I look forward to that as well. And thanks for being here. Now we'll keep going in the circle. Carli, love to hear a little bit about what you do and your role in the industry.
Yeah, I'm originally from San Diego, California. That's where I kind of started my brewing career. From the service side, I was not interested in brewing at all until it kind of fell in my lap, and I was just like, okay, this is kind of cool. I don't have to be an accountant. I can, make beer for a living. So I was in San Diego. I was an assistant brewer at Gordon Biersch and then Rock Bottom. When my predecessor left to open up his own brewery, I was promoted to head brewer there. I was head brewer there for a couple of years. And then an opportunity opened up in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was kind of over the sand and sun. I wanted seasons. So I moved to the east, and I was the head brewer for Bold Missy Brewery in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then I moved over to D9 Brewing Company, where I am now. Where I'm the head brewer for the Charlotte region. I'm also on the Pink Boots board, where I'm in my first year of the board, and they've already roped me into another position. Next year, I'm going to be our vice treasurer, which will move into a treasurer role after that.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for being here today. And, I want to give North Carolina a little shout out, because places like Colorado and Oregon get a lot of the love for the beer world sometimes. But that Charlotte beer scene, it's growing quite well right now. Yeah,
we've got a lot going on out here. I think Charlotte's kind of the underdog in the North Carolina beer scene at the moment. Everybody always talks about Asheville. And Asheville's great. I love Asheville. But we've got a lot going on around here. We've got a lot going on in the cider making as well. And Charlotte just opened their first seltzery. So pretty stoked about that. Yeah.
Laura, there you go. There's your mention for the show.
Yep.
There you go.
Cool, Denise. I'm glad to have you today. I know we've emailed and talked back and forth, but we've never talked face to face. So it's a pleasure to see you. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what you do in craft beer?
Sure, absolutely. And I am somewhat new. I've only been in it for about 3 years, less than 3 years. Had the pleasure of opening up a brewery along with my husband, who had been home brewing for years in our basement. So finally got it out of the basement. However, I'm new to craft beer, and However, I have more than 25 years of business management and marketing experience, and that's exactly what I do with the brewery. So I've given myself the title of general manager. So I'm co-owner and general manager and the lead marketer as well for the brewery. So I'm the one that lead the communication, do all the behind the scenes things to keep us running and to keep our doors open and to allow the brewers to look great. But many people know that, hey, we know that all of this wouldn't happen without someone actually making it happen. So that's what I do at the brewery, at Montclair Brewery in New Jersey. So we have been behind on the brewery scene New Jersey, but we're finally starting to make some headway. I think we're one, if not the fastest growing state as far as brewery numbers are. I believe we may be or the second or something like that. So we have been, now that the laws have loosened up a little bit in our state, we're seeing a lot more growth, a lot more breweries opening up.
And what's been your favorite thing about running the brewery so far?
So I'm a marketer, so I like coming out with helping to come out with new products, so new beer. So it's funny. So because I wasn't raised or grew up in this industry, I see it as a product. So I'm used to product marketing. So for me, it's a product. And that's where sometimes it's a little challenging because I see it as that. And people that are making this product, it's very near and dear to them. And I'm like, hey, I need certain information to be able to describe it. And hey, I think we should call it XYZ instead of ABC or whatever. So my favorite part is really working with the beer, whether it's naming them, marketing them, and reaching out to people. And then also we do have we had a tap room. Now it's outside beer garden, interacting with our customers too, and hearing their feedback is really one of my favorite parts as well.
Awesome. I love your passion. And I guess having, a brewery in a smaller brewery state like New Jersey is a lot of education that goes on. Now, through my company, Secret Hopper, we were working with a brewery in the Minneapolis area, and they had us send shoppers into the brewery. 1 month, they had us send in strictly men. We sent 10 men into the brewery. The next month, we sent strictly 10 females. And the goal was to see how their staff was engaging with the different genders. And we found out that the staff wasn't giving the women who came into the brewery the same level of attention as they gave the males. So, why do you ladies believe that women aren't represented at higher levels in craft beer? Where did this problem stem from? At this point, the floor is open for all these questions. We'll dive right in.
I think it starts with visibility. Everybody always says, if you don't see someone like you in that role, you're not going to think that it's for you. So you've got to, see other women and other women of color in those positions in order for you to even kind of like cross your mind that that's where you belong or where you should go. And so I think we need to, push more of the visibility of women in all of these different roles, not just brewers, but in distribution, in sales, in the lab, like all of those different positions, so that, you can see that you're welcome everywhere.
Well, and to that point, also, a lot of the advertising has always been aimed at men. And I think to the consumer part of that question, it's interesting to see it's always been kind of the sexy ads, but it's always aimed at men. And maybe that's the part of being aimed at men. But I think that marketing is starting to shift some too. Maybe Denise, since you're into marketing, how do you see that?
Yeah, so I totally agree with what you've said, especially with mass marketed beers. So the bigger brands, they were like heavily male focused and like playing up the whole sexuality and the things that get men to pay attention sometimes. So especially with that. And that's why I see now that I think the smarter brands are the ones that are now going beyond that and seeing that, hey, you know what, if we want to grow, we're going to have to do things a little differently and reach out to new demographics. And to do that, you've got to then change your marketing to appeal to those new demographics. So I know, like, even what we try to do at Montclair Brewery, when we don't have huge advertising budgets like the big brands, but even on a smaller scale without social media, we try to make it more community feeling. So where it's because people like seeing other people have a good time. And people like seeing people that look like them as well. So I think that's important. So in the visuals, to make sure there are females, make sure there are people of color. And then you could also have your traditional people as well. So they also feel like, like I'm welcome as well. So I think that's important. And then in what you're showing. So some people may only care. I mean, the beer is very, very important. Absolutely. Because if you don't have a great product, then of course people will not continue to come back. You may get just someone coming one time, but you won't get that repeat customer. And you definitely want that repeat customer. But you have to understand that it also goes beyond the beer. And I think some people who've been in the industry for a long time, and some also brewers who are very proud of their work, like they should be, but sometimes, because I see it even within our own company, sometimes I have to remind the others that I work with, the men, that it's more than just the beer. Yes, I know the beer is like so important to you, and it is, and it should be. It's important to our customers too, but there is so much more than that to make it successful. And that's where I need then their support to be able to show, like, I want to take pictures of them brewing or pictures of them doing things. And they're like, this is nothing. This is boring. No one cares about it. I'm like, that's not true. People do care about it. I know I'm bothering you. I'm in your way, but we need this. Because if you brew beer and no one comes and no one knows about it, then what's the whole point? So, yeah.
Well, I think speaking to what Carli said, making sure that there are women at the table on the business side. I ran into that when I worked at Worthy is, I think you have a certain mentality that's just, it's the way it's been, right? It's been a male-driven industry. And it's breaking that mentality, and it's making sure that women are at the table and we have a voice and we share that voice. We're not afraid to share that voice, and letting them know your craft beer demographic has changed. It's not just men drinking craft beer anymore. Women love craft beer. You're seeing more and more of that in the state of Oregon. Pre-pandemic, you could walk into any brew pub or tasting room and you have more of a 60-40 split where it's, women heavy. So, it's making sure that women are in the industry, that we have a seat at the table, and just breaking that old school mentality. I still deal with that.
I have a couple of thoughts that have come up. One is women do some ridiculously high percentage of purchasing. So for off-premise, it would definitely serve everybody to market to women. But the other piece was when I was designing retail programs for resorts, one of the things that it seemed to be really effective to do was to do more flights. Women, for whatever reason, like more flights and that perceived value with flights. It's shareable. But also we had root beer flights to accommodate dietary and to accommodate children. So more like Denise, to your point of being community-based and to having something that's available for everyone. So you're accommodating not just the beer drinker, but everybody, and allowing it to appeal to in a broader way, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love that, Laura. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Christina.
Oh, I was just speaking to that because I know, like in Oregon, we're Central Oregon primarily, we're very family driven. So all of the brew pubs you'll see are very family oriented, whether it's, little children play area or making sure you have a kids menu. How in your states, ladies, how does that look? Are brew pubs and breweries still perceived as adults only, or do you see that it's moving in that family or family friendly direction?
It's kind of a mix in North Carolina. You have kind of your breweries that don't exactly cater towards children. Maybe the brewery owners, they either don't want to encourage children because that's not the brewery that they want, or they don't have children, so they're not in that mindset. They don't know what a parent needs in order to be able to have a couple beers. And so I think it kind of depends, because we definitely have a lot of breweries that they have a kids area. They have snacks geared towards kids. They'll have lots of kid beverages, or they'll even have, I know some breweries that they have craft sodas that are holistic and good types of things in them that they make in-house or that they have local suppliers for. So I think, but then it's a mix. I think that a lot of people are realizing that they need to be more family friendly, because that's a huge demographic that you're going to lose if, parents on the weekends when they've got their kids, if they want to go somewhere, they're going to need to bring their kids along most of the time.
No, Christina, that's a fantastic point you made, and I hadn't really thought about that. But when we're creating these welcoming spaces for everyone by allowing the whole family to come, it just brings more women to the brew pubs and tap rooms than already. And to go on something you said earlier, Laura, about the purchasing power of women, I did a study a while back and found that women actually spend 6% more per brewery visit than men. So while there may be less, they're spending more. So I think that's something, brewery owners, they should be thinking about ways they can attract more women, of course, because, it's a valuable source of additional revenue, and you can educate them and they'll become loyal customers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I would say in New Jersey, it's a mix. I would say more on the family friendly side, but then there are some, I'm sure, breweries who are not as family friendly, but I know with us, family, I think it's also important knowing your community. So where you're physically based, if it is a big family area, like the town that we're in has lots of families. People move here to raise their families. So it made a lot of sense for us to make sure that we were welcoming to families. So whether that's even having a changing table in the bathroom. So for those that have to change diapers, we have that. And then games and things like that when the tap room is 100% open, that kids can play with the games and their parents as well too. And the craft sodas you mentioned, that's important too. So we do have those as well. We have 4 different flavors on hand because we wanted to actually have enough so that someone can have a non-alcoholic flight. So you mentioned the flight. So we're
that's awesome.
Big on flights too. So, and then and not only the kids, because sometimes the husband may come with the pregnant wife. So then the wife also, she can't drink, she's pregnant, but has something also that she can drink as well. So you try to think of all of that to make
that's a really cool offering, Denise.
Yeah.
Now, Laura, I kind of want to turn back to you because you've been in the industry quite some time. Looking back on your career in craft beer, how has women representation changed from your viewpoint? And what steps have we made towards progress?
It's definitely increased substantially. And you find that the regard that people have for women has also increased in just that validation that women can and do excel in many, if not all, of the roles that are traditionally held by men. I find that the interesting question is, and it's a careful balance, when a woman is invited to participate or to be hired for a particular position, it's a careful balance of choosing to look for women who are qualified and skilled in that area, versus choosing the woman over a man because they're a woman. And it's gotten to be a little bit, I don't know, irritating at some point that when a woman is hired for a position, it's automatically assumed that everybody's trying to be diverse instead of that woman being the best fit for that position. So it's an interesting question. And the reverse discrimination question comes up of, well, you could have hired, so that's an interesting topic to discuss. And I think there's a lot of depths there that are just weird. But we are successfully seeing more women in more positions other than in the lab, other than serving tables, other than just sales roles, successfully and excelling and winning awards and showing on the traditional scale, not a scale that's adjusted for us to be kind to us, but the true absolute scale that we're performing at the same level, and there's no need to be nicer to us.
No, I love that. And it ties in really heavily to what Garrett Oliver is preaching these days with the Michael Jackson Foundation for Brewing and Distilling. He talks about, in his 25 years, he never hired a Black person as a brewer. And when asked why, he said because they didn't have the skills for the positions he was looking for, the standard Brooklyn brewery wanted. And he thought about it a little while, and he said, man, I'm one of the causes of this problem. We need to make sure we're providing the tools to educate people so they can be on that level. While his foundation worked towards more the advancement, of people of color in the industry and giving them the tools necessary, what can we do to help women have those tools to also excel in craft beer? What are you guys' thoughts on that one?
I mean, education is the biggest thing, I think, because most, like Laura said, like we want to be hired based on our skills and our education as well. Like we don't want to be hired just because we're women. We don't want to. And I think the other thing is women don't normally, there have been studies that women don't apply for jobs that they are not qualified for. So if women don't have the education and the experience, they're not going to qualify. They're not going to even apply for those jobs. So they're not even going to give the employer the opportunity to hire them. And so with Pink Boots, that's why we do so many scholarships in so many different areas, because we want women to have the education at their disposal so that they can, confidently apply for these jobs and get them based off of their merits. I think education is a big thing, but then also, some jobs, they almost never make it to like the job market. Sometimes they're not even posted because they're filled by who and somebody knows somebody, the boys club, that kind of thing. And that's kind of where mentorship within the industry comes into play, because sometimes it is who you know. And there's somebody who says something, while they're having a beer, like, oh, hey, we're looking for somebody. Oh, I have a perfect candidate for you. And that's where women really need to advocate for the other women in the industry to really push them into more positions that, they are qualified for, but they might never have the opportunity to apply for.
Now you talk about mentorship in craft beer, I think of like Kim Jordan with New Belgium, but there's not a whole lot of women. Denise, you're a female brewery owner, but there's not a whole lot of role models for people to look up to and say, I want to be that person. What can we do to help change that? And, how do these female role models have the power to help, shape our industry a little bit these days?
Yeah, well, I think so. It's the onus is on whatever women that happen to be in those type of positions or roles to be able to make a difference. In addition, though, I think the men, a lot of the onus is on them too, who may be in those positions to make a change. Like you mentioned that with the example of Brooklyn Brewery, that it's more about changing the mindset and for them to be more open-minded. Let's say if a female comes to interview for a brewing position, that they're open-minded to that, because there are still many out there that will automatically think that, oh no, you've got to be a male to be able to brew. That, hey, you won't have that strength to be able to pull the hoses or to lift kegs or do all the other things. So it's really, I believe, also the mindset of those on the hiring end to be more open-minded, to know that, hey, you know what, women can do other non-traditional roles as well, and to give them that opportunity and that chance.
And I feel like that goes back to, you know, like women will only apply for what they are, you know, capable of. And if you put those, you know, every brewing job I've ever seen is you must be able to lift this weight, you know, this high, you must be able to lift with this weight over your head, you know, basically the weight of a grain bag or a hot bag. And, you know, when women read job descriptions, we're going to look at that and be like, can I do that? And if so, like, you know, we're going to apply for it. And I think, like Denise said, the men just have to be open to it, and they have to just not come in with their preconceived notions of what we're capable of.
I think there's some opportunity too there to adapt how we do things and to find tools that make it possible for a greater range of people to participate. If we're talking inclusively about not necessarily discrimination, but lack of inclusion, we have to look at people with disabilities as well. Do we extend a little further? Do we figure out a way around the big heavy hose or the big heavy grain sack? Is there a way that we can figure out to make it more inclusive, even if we're not physically capable? I think we're going to see more and more that there are people that are truly gifted and talented in, say, recipe development that you want to have, and you will figure out a way to bring them in. And I think some of that we can help by doing the mentorship program, by having internships, by getting people that are interested in the brewery doing follow-alongs, doing the actual job in the shadow of somebody, bringing more women in to do that, bringing more just complete diversity across the board. If it's somebody that's interested, figure out a way for them to be actually in the brewery and learning how it works.
No, I love that. Now, looking at you for careers and just lives in general, you know, has there been that one specific female who's been an inspiration to you, who's helped you fight on and just want to, you know, take your life to the next level? Christina, you're nodding your head there. I want to hear.
Tanya Cornett. Tanya Cornett's been in the industry for quite some time, and I met her about 14 years ago when I started judging homebrew competitions here locally. And at that time, she was the head brewer at Bend Brewing Company. And if you've never been to Bend and visited their brewery, it's on the second floor of the pub. There is no elevator, and she has to use this like old school hauling mechanism to get her grain bags up to there. And she was on her own. She didn't have help. And when I met her and spent a little time just hanging out with her in her brewery, she just drove me to want to be in this industry. And I've watched her career and her growth, and she's a world-renowned brewer now. And it's she definitely helped me want.
I love that.
To
it's
be
nice to have a role model you can just get to know but relate to so well. It just inspire you to continue on. Anybody else have an experience they want to share on that one?
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that I would, well, and Julia gets upset with me, but Julie Hers is really the person who has inspired me to keep going, to do more, to reach out in different areas, and to leverage the networking and knowledge that I gained in distribution in other ways. Helped me expand into the Brewers Association execution of GABF and of Savor, and really truly embraced expanding what we each do. So it's interesting right now, since she's creating her own new little business, to be able to say, hey, you inspired me to open my own. Now let me share how I did that and what I've learned, and maybe some of what I've learned can help her as well. So it's been super inspiring. But I think she has more energy for craft beer in her pinky than most people do in their whole bodies. She's amazing.
Yeah, I think passion is definitely a very important part of it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely been Laura Ulrich, our current president of Pink Boot Society. I knew her from before that, from being in the San Diego industry, and she just really, sorry, my dogs. She has just inspired me beyond brewing, which she's inspired me in brewing, but she's also inspired me to be a leader for other women. She was the one who kind of pushed me into being a Pink Boots chapter leader in San Diego. And she was just like, Carli, you can do this. Like, I can't do this. And she's just the one who's pushing me like, hey, the chapter needs you. Like, we need more women pushing women into leadership roles, because a lot of times we don't think we can or we're qualified. But, you know, just being a woman in this industry, you are qualified to help other women. And I think we just need to push each other to be doing, we need to constantly be pushing each other to do more. And so she's a good pusher into positions that you need to move into.
Now, Denise, is there anyone in your life who's definitely been an inspiration to you?
So during our journey to opening up the brewery, we went out and visited lots of other breweries, mostly local, but we did go other places too. So and that's kind of the whole point of this discussion, is that there aren't many women, but whenever I did see another woman, it was always wonderful to see. And there's a brewery that's been around for a very long time in New Jersey, one of the first ones to open up, called Flying Fish. And that was also a husband and wife opened brewery. So I remember, and I can't even remember the owner's name, which I feel really bad about. But I remember speaking with her. And so I just found there was a lot of commonality. First of all, we both opened it while having another full-time job. So it's like, oh, wow. She's like, oh, yes. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to see how long I can do that. Maybe 5 years. She was like, yeah, good luck with that. I think after 2 years, she then had to leave her full-time job. So it was just an inspiration. She's like, it's fun. Keep at it, just believe in it and continue to do it. So I do remember that. And that was great advice, and one that I try to remember during those times when I need it.
No, I definitely think it's an important conversation we're having right now. Just the other day in the group, there was a post about, racism in the beer industry. And there were some people who went in the comments and said, it's not a problem. And in my mind, that is part of the problem. Failure to identify the problems that we're facing ourselves is just, we got to educate those people so we can improve. And I feel, if the craft beer industry could be causing this problem themselves. You mentioned Flying Fish. I'm going to change it to Flying Dog. They have a beer called Raging Bitch. That is the name of a beer. And there's other beers out there with, lewd, inappropriate, just names that maybe degrade women on a bottle that shouldn't be out there. Is craft beer itself part of the problem? And why do you think so? And how can we fight within our own industry of professionals to make improvements?
I think we have to do our own, kind of our own policing and kind of those types of things. The Brewers Association, I think it was back in 2016, maybe 2016, 2017, they put into their bylaws that, you weren't allowed to have any labeling or beer names that were degrading to women. There's still a lot more to go, but it's a step in the right direction for even having standards that address that. And it's kind of the same thing. You got to accept that there's a problem. A lot of people just think about it's just a beer name, but it's a beer name that isolates, a certain section of your demographic that aren't going to feel comfortable because of that beer name.
It would be really nice if the people who were going to put the more offensive beer names or graphics or whatever would see what their sales could have been if they weren't offending the person who's making the purchase. And it would be good too if we as women were not quite so calloused and bulletproof and just owns the fact that we don't really like that. I think there's a lot of women who say, oh, yeah, that's just the way it is. Well, it is, but it is until we change it. So I think part of it is understanding that there is a problem and it being willing to understand what that problem looks like and how it feels to the people who are being discriminated against. And sometimes it's just completely ignorance and we just don't understand. And we'd be to fix it if we understood. But how to get there is an interesting question and a big challenge. And I do think the BA is taking good steps to try to head in that direction. Having more breweries owned by people of color, by LGBTQ folks, by anybody who isn't white and straight is progress. We just need to embrace that progress and support that progress, and that mentorship will get us a long way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know as someone still somewhat new to craft beer, I know too that when I go to, let's say, the beer aisle, the craft beer aisle, I know what I'm attracted to. And yes, when I see those things that are named, I mean, just such horrible, offensive names, and the graphics too, I'm like, I'm not going to buy this. I don't care how good the beer may be. I'm not buying this. I'm not. If you're not attracted to it, then most likely you won't buy it. So I think it's a great question. Like, how many more sales could you had if you had things a little differently? And I think that's important. I remember there was a Nielsen study that they also talked about packaging, and so not only packaging like in cans or bottles, and if you wanted to reach new demographics, you really needed to take a look at your packaging, because the current packaging was really going after that same audience, the white men, straight men, that's it. And if you really wanted to grow your sales and go after new areas like women or people of color or anything like that, that you'd really need to change up your packaging. And I know that's something too that we try to do a lot in with our packaging, is that we try not to, we let others do all that other crazy stuff and that they think may be edgy or whatever, which I find as just offensive and plain old ugly. And we wanted to do things a little differently.
Denise, you bring up
interesting too.
Go ahead, Laura.
It's interesting to see the bumps in the road that we have seen with people making pink packaging for their beer and being patronizing with their beer and trying to find women in a way that we don't feel good about either. So that's been interesting to watch.
But I think that brings a really good conversation piece. So was that Carli? Go ahead.
I wonder how they get this stuff past TTB. Like when our stuff comes back from TTB and, they're nitpicking, stuff being called an ale versus a brew, and all of that kind of stuff and stuff that I've seen from my friends. And I'm like, how did they get that passed? Like, who's their TTB reviewer? Can we have them too?
Yeah. I was going to say, just from a guild perspective, because this has been a hot topic of conversation the last 18 months that I've been on the guild, just how derogatory names and packaging can be. And so we took a stance like the BA did, and we put into our bylaws that we don't agree with it. We won't have you at any of our events if we find the name of your beer is in any sense derogatory, racist, anything. So we come together. If something comes across my desk as a beer that is supposed to be held at one of our events, I take it to the board and our equity committee, and we look at it. And if we decide no, then there's an education aspect, because I can go back to that brewery owner or that brewer and explain to them why we won't be having them at our event. And it's actually, it's worked. We've had a couple breweries, small breweries, where that conversation was actually, I feel like they took it really well, and they were young male brewers who they just didn't think about it. And when it was, me as a woman sitting down with them and having that conversation and saying, here is why this is derogatory, or here is why this is racist, or sexist, or anything along those lines, most of them are willing to listen. Some just aren't going to care.
Right.
Which is sad.
Christina, I love that you went back to the breweries and told them why it had that educational component. I was just hanging on to each of your words, seeing where this was going to go. And it's awesome to follow through is there. But how do you handle those breweries who don't care? Do you still allow them to be part of your guild? Do you just allow them to be part of the guild and not invite them? Because it gets to almost, I don't know if awkward is the right word, but an almost uncomfortable conversation. So how do you handle that?
It is. So we just created our equity and diversity committee last year. The fall of last year, we were able to put one together. And just over the last few months, we've done a lot of work around social justice and equity within our brewing community here in Oregon. And this was a topic of conversation, whether it's a brewer's behavior or packaging or, names of beer across the board. How do we as a guild handle that? As far as membership and communication. And so we're currently in the process of writing up an amendment to our bylaws. We have created a code of ethics / conduct that will go into our members packet, which we're getting ready to do our membership renewals. So with that, it basically outlines what we as a guild expect of our members for their behavior, whether it's in public, front facing, whether it's packaging, all of that. And if anything comes across to us where we find out that they've been in trouble, there's a sexual harassment, anything that's brought to our attention, we take it to the board, and the board has the right to decide if their membership is either suspended or completely it's withdrawn, and they're not allowed back into the guild. So we're still working on that process and what that's going to look like, but we're taking those steps, and it will be communicated to our members, that we have standards that we expect, our Oregon Guild members to behave at. And I know that there's guilds across the country that are moving in that direction, that are, incorporating code of conduct into their bylaws and into their membership packets. So hopefully that just moves the conversation forward.
I think that's extremely important what you guys are doing. I commend the guild for even having like an equity committee, because that's something, whether it's volunteers, should be part of every craft beer guild in every state right now. Extremely important. Now, kind of talk about guilds for a minute, because I've talked to so many great female guild directors these days. It seems like there's quite a few. Why do you feel, and anyone can answer, not just Christina on this one, women have really elevated to these roles as executive directors of quite a few guilds in the country? I think that's awesome. Is there a reason why you believe that's happening? I think it's great for craft beer. And, what can we do just in general to help this overall in our industry? Carli?
I mean, I know that we're really good at multitasking, and from all of the guild directors that I know that are women, or just guild directors in general, there is a lot of multitasking going on. And then I know for the San Diego Guild, the positions started, smaller. And then as the San Diego Guild grew, as the San Diego beer industry grew and the guild grew, it became a bigger and bigger position. And because, she started, Paige, who's the guild director in San Diego, she started from when it was small. It was her role. She made the role by growing the guild. But I think the biggest thing is just being able to multitask.
Well, I think it comes back to, that the topic we were talking about before, that women will apply for positions that they feel that they can do, right? And I feel very lucky that my personal career has led me to this position, and I feel like the skill set that I have been able to gain over the last 15 years and the different roles that I've played, I felt this. I feel like I've been, God, sorry, my train of thought is just totally all over the board right now. Too many balls in the air, too many balls. I just feel like I've been leading up to this job. And Carli's right. There are so many balls in the air. There are so many tasks at any given time, especially right now. You know, you have a pandemic. So most of us have spent the last like 7 months just trying to help keep our brewers alive and afloat by speaking at a legislative level and making sure that, you know, craft beer has a voice at the table. But yeah, it's nice to see so many women at that level. And I feel very grateful. I get to sit on a call with most of them every Thursday, and we talk to each other and we learn from each other. And I will say the same about the men in the industry that are sitting as EDs. They work hard. So I don't know. I don't know why you see more women at this level, other than, you know, we're really good at, like Carli said, multitasking. But I'm glad to see a lot of women here.
That was great. A pleasure to interact with. Denise?
I would. Good.
Yeah, I would say within the, I think, 3 or 4 years that we've been involved in the New Jersey Brewers Association, it's been women. So we had 2 women as executive director, and the current is a woman. And I think in addition to the multitasking, it may be also some women that maybe really likes beer and likes craft beer. And this is an area of the industry. It's that management skills that you need. You need to be organized. You need to be able to coordinate things. And I think some women have that natural tendency to be able to coordinate things, organize things. Maybe it's that maternal instinct, whether they're mom or not, doesn't have to be, but they still have that instinct, and that could be why. And maybe more men, if they want to work in beer, they may choose more the traditional macho role of being a brewer instead of being, let's say, leading up the association.
No, I think it's great to see women in any capacity get more involved in craft beer. And Laura, I know you wanted to add something.
Yeah, to Denise's point, I think the communication piece, the ability to communicate, that community, that sense of community and that sense of nurturing too is important. And that's not exclusive to women, but I think women do it really well. That ability to corral and herd people is something that I think we're generally brought up to do on some level. Some men are good at that too, absolutely. But the communication piece and being able to communicate with everybody and validate and keep that community together is super important.
But to go back to what you said earlier, Laura, you don't want a woman hired just because she's a woman. You want her to have the right skill set and be able to do it because she's the best candidate. And I think there's a lot of best candidates out there, and I love it. So yeah, I want to throw out one final, sorry?
We're creating more best candidates by being mentors and having internships. I think that really is key.
I love it. I love it. So I'm going to throw out one final question for everyone. Now, we've seen the recent Beers Without Beer festival that's happened, like a Women in Craft Beer Fest. You know, Pink Boots, Carli, you guys are doing great things. I would just love to hear about some of the initiatives and breweries or just people in general you believe are really a big part of this fight and positive changes that you've kind of witnessed over the past while. You know, Carli, do you want to start maybe saying some of the current initiatives that Pink Boots is doing?
So we figured out, I think this, big social justice movement that has been going on has really shown a lot of, because we were so focused on women in the beer industry, we were losing some of the demographics of the women of color who were in the industry, that they didn't feel like they belonged in Pink Boots. And we were just like, but no, like, you're a woman in the industry, like, you absolutely belong with us. And because we didn't have any, I think they just didn't have the voice, or we didn't have that membership. We were kind of missing that. So we've really been able to take a step back. We worked with Dr. J from the Brewers Association and Crafted for All, and we've been really working on looking at our membership, looking at our leadership, and really assessing what we're doing and trying to create more opportunities and looking at more equity versus equality, to make sure that we are giving all of our members and all of the women in the craft beer industry everything that they need to do, that they need to succeed. So we're working really hard on that. I mean, we've always got our scholarships. We're working on more scholarships. We just opened up our membership to all of the fermented beverages. So that's wine, seltzer, distillers, cider makers, all of that. So we're really working on being more inclusive. And yeah, got a lot of stuff going, lots of balls in there.
Christina, I'm going to invite you to chime in on this one because I know you have to take an important call in a moment. I don't want you to get in trouble.
There we go. Yeah, sorry, I have a hard stop for a legislative call. So I think just highlighting women in the industry. So I'm working on a new project that I'm going to launch next Monday on social media and on my website, where it's called the Oregon Brewers Guild Prost Questionnaire. And I'm doing outreach to the women in the craft beer industry here in Oregon and having them fill out this questionnaire, and it's fun questions, right? Like, what music are you listening to in the brewery? Or what are you drinking when you're at home? And just to highlight women in the industry so that people, not just our brewers know, but that the community knows that there are women in these brewing positions making the beer that they're sitting at home drinking, or they're going to their favorite pub drinking. So, and then working with other community organizations to ensure, whether it's a mentorship program, or we're even talking about working on a scholarship program for partly for women and then partly for BIPOC individuals. So.
Fantastic.
That's what we're doing.
I know you have to go now, but thank you so much for presenting yesterday, sharing today. Good luck on your call. We'll chat soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks, Christina. Now, Laura, Denise, while we finish winding down, I would love to hear from either of you about some positive changes you're seeing.
Yeah, I know with the New Jersey Brewers Association. I know for the past, I think 2 or 3 years, we've had for Women's History Month, we've had like a women's, what that ringing is, okay, women's brew collaboration. So, and I know that's something will most likely continue. And then just recently, though, it was discussed to have also a smaller group to help increase the diversity within the New Jersey beer scene as well. So a few of us, including myself, was identified as being on that committee to help to bring in more people of color, more the underrepresented groups in craft beer. So looking forward to see where that goes.
I'm excited for the success of that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm seeing in my world more on a affiliates, kind of industry affiliates level, that as we find each other, that was originally begun really in Pink Boots. Candace Moon became a good friend of mine through Pink Boots. And every time we meet other women who are excelling in their particular specialty, we tend to refer each other, right? And so you build that networking and that community, which is not exclusive to women, of course, but as you become familiar each other with all of the people in that network that are doing an amazing job or creating new opportunities or creating new amazing concepts, goals, have a mission in the brewing world to help everybody. Mary is a good example. Bretman is creating the world in accounting to make it accessible to brewers. So I guess I'm seeing a lot of that in the industry affiliate world, the support industry that supports the brewing industry, the support people that support the brewing industry. That diversity and inclusion is becoming bigger, and it's becoming bigger and better because we're promoting each other and finding those people who excel regardless of color, background, gender, anything.
I think we couldn't pick a better quote to end on, Laura. I mean, that's fantastic. It's great to see this positive change happening right now. I think we have a long ways to go, but just educating, making our communities more welcoming, increasing diversity, making everybody feel like, they're part of craft beer. It's extremely important. Now, to go around one more time, is there anything else you'd like to say to everyone watching today? Anything motivational, positive, just any advice you'd give to how they can better their business brewery by helping create more diverse place of work and place where people want to hang out?
Yeah. I mean, I will just repeat one of the points that I mentioned before was about being open-minded and being welcoming to welcome different people in and to welcome new and just welcoming, be open-minded.
And I would kind of same kind of thing I've said earlier is to, push the women to apply for more positions and to push themselves into leadership positions within their industry, within their local area, within their job, because that's really what's going to, push them in their career to new heights.
I think one of the most important things to me is just that awareness, the awareness that somebody might be perceiving that space, that place, that business, this moment as being not welcoming, and understanding that you can make a difference yourself, not underestimating the power of each individual person to improve our space and to be accepting and to create new environments that will improve us all. I mean, I really think that mindfulness and that awareness are super important as we walk into a better and improved space for everybody.
No, and I know, Carli, you mentioned a lot on mentorship earlier, and I think that's hugely important. But one thing we didn't talk about, you three ladies and Christina are setting an example for other women in the craft beer. You are definitely leading by example, and I hope everyone takes note of what you're doing in the industry, the effort, the impacts you make, the successes you have. And I appreciate all of you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been a really fun Craft Beer Professionals virtual conference for me. I think this is a great way to end it, just talking about how we can make our industry even stronger and better. Because the more different faces we see in a tap room, the stronger and better we're going to grow together. So thank you three so much. Thanks, Christina, as well. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and enjoy the rest of your days.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Goodbye.